Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a production of the Beacon Center of Tennessee. Taylor and Mark back with you wearing our favorite team gear today. If you're listening, not watching, Mark's got his Marquette Champions hat on. I've got my Braves shirt on, and it is a rainy, gloomy day here in Nashville that's going to clear up to be a beautiful Easter weekend. Mark, y'all got any Easter plans for this weekend, hanging out with Kira's family?
No, they're all in Dallas. We're just going to hang out with Sloan, who's on the mend, so she seems to feel a little better. So that's hanging out with the dog is the extent of my plans.
Our poor little Sloaney girl has had a rough week with her health. Bless her heart. I miss her. She needs to come live with the girls. She's always happy and healthy when she's at my house. So maybe she should come over here more often.
She's coming next weekend, so don't forget.
That's true. Oh, I have not forgotten. I can't wait. She's my little snuggle bug, and I can't wait to snuggle with her next weekend. Well, my family's coming into town this weekend. I actually woke up early this morning, and I'm making 2 carrot cakes, one for my boyfriend's family, one for my family, and I shredded 2 pounds of carrots this morning. So I got that upper arm workout in, shredding carrots for my homemade carrot cakes. Mark, I feel like you probably wouldn't like carrot cake because it has a vegetable in it.
It's good except for the carrot, but I feel like sometimes people sweeten the carrot enough that it tastes good. I've had carrot cakes I like.
The trick is if you buy a grocery store carrot cake, you're going to have a gross experience. They're not good when you buy them from the grocery store, but a homemade carrot cake where you shred, like microplane the carrots so they're super small, so you can't really taste any of the carrot texture, but it's in there to make the cake, like the sponginess of the cake, good. That's a good carrot cake. I make an incredible carrot cake, not to brag on myself, but I will brag on myself. I make an incredible carrot cake. So my 2 orders for this weekend are going to be very happy.
Why not just do the same cake without the carrots? I bet it'd be a lot better. And it's already good.
Okay. Actually have done that. I've tried to make a carrot cake, no carrots, and it turns out very dry. So did you know that when you cook with fruits or vegetables and you put them in a bake, like a bread or something like that, it adds to the moisture and the sponginess of the actual cake itself? So a carrot cake without the carrots is kind of just like a spice cake. You just have to add more fats and to make it that texture, but with the carrots, it just adds so much to it. You just got to trust me, Mark. I'll make you a carrot cake sometime and you will not be able to taste the carrots.
What if you put strawberry in instead?
Well, then it would be a strawberry cake. It would be a strawberry cake, which
really
I could also make that for you and make an incredible strawberry cake as well. You just need to place your order for your birthday early, and I will make you whatever kind of cake you want, and you will not be able to taste any fruit, vegetable, anything unless you specifically ask for it. How about that?
Okay, deal.
Last year for Mark's birthday, he called me out and he said, "I know that you're planning on making me a cake. Don't do it. I'm trying to cut calories." And I'm like, at least you know that my heart is here for you, and I will make you a cake if you ever ask for it. This week we had a big week at the Beacon Center. Everyone knows we have been working on education issues for 20 years. That is kind of our bread and butter at Beacon. We talk about taxes a lot, fiscal health of the economy in Tennessee, healthcare access, affordable housing, and education. Affordable housing is kind of a newer one for us, but education. We came out with a really cool animated video several weeks ago explaining what charter schools are, and we talked about it on the podcast as well, because there's a fundamental misunderstanding among many Tennesseans about what charter schools actually are. And the animated video was actually to supplement the report that we came out with this week, starting a conversation about charter schools. Did you know that over 40,000 students in Tennessee attend our over 120 charter schools? That's a good number of students for a program that's fairly new. When you think about the whole timeline of education in Tennessee, charter schools are fairly new. They have come into existence in our lifetimes, and parents are seeing the incredible results from them and starting to send their kids there more and more and more. More charter schools are opening, but there are still things that need to be done. And that's what this report talks about. Cracks some of the myths around charter schools and talks about what we need to do to increase the presence of charter schools and why we need to do it. And the why is basically that they work. And we can see in the data, and we can see through talking to parents and students that they work. But we have a lot of the data here. So Mark, you sent out a press release. You've been talking with Jason a lot. Kudos to Jason on our staff. He's kind of become our education expert, and he's so good at these types of things. And he put together some key takeaways for us. So Mark, what was the one that struck you the most?
Well, I was really shocked. I mean, obviously I know that charters are growing in Tennessee, but I was really shocked at the student population. So The most charters are generally in cities. So in our big four cities, which is Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis, that 85% of the student population are minority students, as opposed to traditional public schools in the area, which I think is about 60.5. So basically, a lot of minority students may not be getting, the quality education that they deserve in their zone public schools. So having another public option for them to go to. So that was, 85% is a really high number, especially when you think about kind of the minority population percentage. I don't know offhand, but I think Memphis might be a little bit higher than the other ones. But you're talking about, no more than 20, 30, 40% in most of these places. So to make up 85% of the population of charter schools was really, it's astounding. And I think a lot of the people who, might be on the left who claim to stand for these minority populations should maybe take a look at that before they come out and attack charter schools. Because it seems like in this case, they're kind of siding with, the teachers union rather than, the minority students that need this option so badly.
100%. That was actually, you stole mine. That was one of my favorite takeaways too. I actually made a social media graphic for it, which you will be seeing if you check our social media throughout the weekend, because that to me was the most incredible number. We released a video not too long ago of a parent whose daughter is at a private school in Memphis because of the ESA program. I didn't know until I had a conversation with her that her older daughter had graduated from a charter school and the mom herself was homeschooled. It just goes to show that under one roof, you can't say that one size fits all when it comes to education. We say that a lot. It's a really great talking point, but when the rubber meets the road, you can see it. In one roof, a mother and her two daughters all have 3 different types of education, and none of them are traditional zone public schools. And so that's what I think is so cool about school choice just in general. And that was going to be my key point and takeaway too. But I also thought that it was really interesting. And we talked so much about learning loss, post-COVID, post-pandemic. I'm just going to read this straight up because Jason did a good job writing it. A Stanford University study showed that charter schools, specifically in cities like Nashville and Memphis, give students the equivalent of 40 additional learning days in math and 28 additional days in reading. Why is that such a big deal? Well, several reasons. One, there's a whole debate going on across the country about literacy. There are so many groups that are intervening in schools and intervening in education to help with literacy. I have a friend right now who is in school at Vanderbilt to be a literacy coach. We have an issue with literacy in the United States. But when these students at these charter schools get 28 additional days in reading and then the equivalent of 40 additional days in math with all the STEM stuff, the focus on STEM that's happening, giving these students additional opportunities in math and reading, the two things that honestly, say what you want about education, I've never needed anything that I've learned in biology, but the reading and the math, I think, are the most important things. And having these children get opportunities to excel beyond their peers in those two areas, I think is incredible. And I think that charter schools, they are public schools. They're open to all. There's so many misconceptions about that. Hear me when I say charter schools are public schools. They are open to anyone who's eligible for public education, and there is no additional tuition costs associated with them. But they allow schools to adapt and implement new curriculum and different curriculum that the students might need while still keeping up with the state testing standards. I really see no downfall to these things, and that's what I hope that you'll see when you look at our charter schools report that's available at beacontn.org/charterstn. We're going to be talking a lot more about them, but definitely check it out. And if you have a student at home that is interested in a charter school, or you're interested in sending your students to a charter school, let us know. We'd love to talk with you and see if we can help you navigate the path. Mark, any other takeaways before we move on to another topic?
Well, yeah, I would just say that, the video that we did was really good and everything, but it's hard to explain what a charter school is in 60 seconds. So when you look at this report, it's a really good description of kind of what charter schools are, the history of them, why they're here, how they used to be a really bipartisan, thing where you had, Barack Obama saying they're great, Bill Clinton, and some on the left, but sometimes you have some of these far left, really probably bought and paid for by the union groups who are just, who were originally for this because it helps children and have kind of decided to go with the union rather than the kids. But it's just a great background. It's got some Tennessee specific stats, but it's really a good explainer where, if you want to learn a little bit more than a 60-second video can show you, it is definitely worth reading about it and seeing, how it started and what what it's done, kind of all the victories that charter schools have had, and the idea that, just like public schools, charter schools aren't perfect by any means, but that on average, they do a better job educating children than your, zone public school.
They're a great option. And as Ron says from time to time when we're talking about the political shift on school choice, he says, up until the last 15 minutes of history, everyone's been a fan of school choice and charter schools. So what happened in the last 15 minutes? And I think it is special interest, but the results speak for themselves. Charter schools work, school choice works, and you can see it in our report at beacontn.org/charterstn. Mark, let's talk about something spicy. We've been talking about this spicy thing for a few weeks now, and it finally happened. President Trump was indicted. I'm a subscriber to many news apps on my phone, and I was sitting there the other day minding my own business when my phone started just absolutely going off because every single news app, plus Twitter, plus some Instagram live reporter, Facebook live reporter was watching Trump go in to turn himself in, I guess, at that courthouse to be indicted. Everyone's talking about it. What was it? 35 charges?
34, yeah.
Is that 34, 35? Yeah. It finally happened, people. It happened. I will say I was a skeptic. I personally thought that he was spinning up drama for some other reason and that it wasn't actually going to happen. I stand corrected. I'm not wrong often, but I was wrong this time.
Says who? You're on like twice every show.
Okay, I don't like that. But I'm not wrong often. I will stand on that. I would plant my flag in that ground. But I was wrong about this. But what I think is the most interesting part, and as with anything, we'll see where this goes. We'll see what happens. Two most interesting things. One, all the memes. I love meme content. I love that people are, the Babylon Bee wrote an article, obviously joking, saying Trump pens his first letter from prison to the Floridians, like Paul in the Bible, writing his letters to the Thessalonians. I thought it was really funny. But the one thing that I really want to make sure we talk about, Mark, is that polling data that has come out about how Americans feel about this. I read the memes. Mark reads the polls. Mark, let's hear some of the actual data about how Americans feel about this.
Yeah. So what now? I'm going to be taking a CNN poll because that's kind of the one that did both. But I think it's a really, really interesting kind of conundrum here where 76% of Americans thought that politics played some role in the decision to indict Trump. So, I mean, that's a large percentage. We're saying 76. I mean, you're talking about probably about half of Democrats, probably most independents, and nearly all Republicans. So that's a really strong number that you don't see often. But with that being said, a majority of people support the indictment of Trump. So I think it was like, I don't remember the exact number. I think it's 62%. But the idea
I think you
is
said
that,
62. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's hard to read through this. But yeah, so the idea is that people, which is really actually, concerning to me, that 76% of people would say politics played a part in this, and yet they still support it. Because you're basically acknowledging that there's a political aspect of it. But I think that, for what it's worth, people are not always, they're not thinking logically about these things. And they're just thinking, I hate President Trump. I want to see him indicted. Yes, I think it's political, but I'm still happy he got indicted. Which I think is a sad state of affairs in America, that you could feel that.
I know.
As much as we want to act like we're above the fray, I think we all had those moments where you're like, oh, I don't like that person. I'm glad something negative happened to them, even though if you look at the details, you're like, oh, well, maybe that was not a great thing. So I think that looking at this, most people believe that Trump did do what with the Stormy Daniels cover-up payments and everything like that. But when you look at that whole situation, I think most people, and I didn't see this in the poll, but would say it's a misdemeanor offense, not something
34 felonies.
I know. And it's something where Alvin Bragg, who's the DA of New York, and I think it's a rightful, comment. It's like he has downgraded a lot of felonies to misdemeanors from violent criminals. Because, and that's kind of the way he's done. So for him to really go over and above and make this a felony, I think I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who's being honest with you who doesn't think politics are involved in this. Not to say that I'm not a lawyer. I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but it's very clear that if this was Joe Schmo from Nashville, that this is probably not a felony. So I think that outside of everything else, it's pretty clear that politics were involved.
I also, and Mark, we talk about this sometimes off the record. We'll put it on the record. For 230 somethings, we are very jaded because we've worked in politics for a long time. And I can't speak for you here, but I can speak for me that when I see something happening that has what I think to be a political motive, I instantly get an icky feeling. I don't like it. It instantly turns me off. But I do think what we talk about from time to time is that we aren't necessarily always in touch with the average Americans. They don't live in this world that we live in and see the things that we see and digest all of the content that we do. And so when they're just scrolling their feed and looking at it, sitting in the doctor's office, waiting for their kids at pickup and seeing things, they're getting the headlines and going with it. Whereas we sometimes read a lot deeper into it, and we have the background that we have that makes us feel kind of creeped out, and we've seen slippery slopes, and we know the history of politics, and we kind of know where all these things go, and we're a little bit jaded by that. And so we do get a little creeped out and weirded out that people can see something with a political motive and still think it's okay because we've seen where these things go. And so I think that's where our concern comes from, is what Americans are digesting that's making them think, oh yeah, having a political motive to go after your enemies is fine. That to me is, it's not necessarily in defense of Trump or anything like that. It's more of in defense of what we believe to be right and wrong and the slippery slope that goes into prosecuting your political enemies. That's where I think that we both get hung up.
And I would argue that anybody who, consider himself a Democrat or very left or whatever, I just think that you should always try to put yourself in the opposite situation. So say that this happened to President Biden when he left office and there was something about, where he maybe committed some misdemeanor. And would you want this to happen to him? And I think both sides tend to not think that way. They tend to think, oh, I don't like this person, I'm glad this is happening to them, instead of saying, well, let me think about what would happen the other way. And I mean, you can even see this has backfired on Democrats before when they got rid of the filibuster because, they wanted to confirm their judges. And it basically cost them, the Republicans said, well, we're going to do the Supreme Court then. It's just not thinking very far ahead and just kind of thinking this moment. And I don't think that's a smart way to go. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I have not seen the specific charges. So maybe there's something that I don't know about. But looking at it now and what people said, it's clearly political. And I truly don't think this is going to end well. For the liberals who are doing this, I don't think it's going to be a good outcome. I think people see it for what it is, as political, and even if they, agree with it now, I do think there's going to be a big group of people are saying, I don't really like Trump. I think that he probably did this, but this is too far. This is clearly just trying to get political vengeance, like you said, trying to attack your political enemies out of their own office, and it sets a dangerous precedent for future presidents. Who knows what they're going to call a felony, and it's going to, empower these local DAs who don't like somebody. I'm sure there's going to be tons of lawsuits or tons of things like this once Biden leaves office if we allow this to happen. So maybe there's something I don't know about in the Trump indictment papers, but from everything we know, it seems insane that it would be a felony, first of all, and that they would be really trying to attack this.
Well, I think it also deserves to be said, because we see this so much, especially now in the age of social media and clicking on headlines and scrolling past 260-character tweets. So few things are binary. There are so few things that are like, this is blatantly right, this is blatantly wrong, this is my side, this is your side. And there is so much nuance in the middle that tends to get forgotten. And I know that's kind of off topic to what we're talking about, but as we're talking about putting yourself in other people's shoes and looking at the other side and considering, would I be okay if this was happening to someone that I like? Also remembering that there is so much nuance when it comes to public policy and political issues that you have to also navigate around. So I would just encourage everyone, as you are reading the headlines, whether it's about this, something going on locally in Tennessee, if you're listening to this in another state, something going on in your state, look at things with nuance and consider, would I like it if this was happening to me? What might be the motivating factors behind this before you fly off the handle and post that 260-character tweet that might be a little bit incendiary. And
also, I'm done hearing the word. I want to say this, that the word fascism, apparently nobody knows what it means, because now everything on Twitter is, oh, this person I don't like is a fascist because they want to give a tax break to somebody. It's insane that people don't understand what the word fascism means, and it's a really problematic word that nobody gets. But if you want to talk about fascism, if this is closer to fascism than most of the things that we're talking about. Now, of course he gets to stay in court, but it's like people just don't understand what that means. Stop using that word. It doesn't mean what you think it means. Not everything that you don't like in politics is fascism. Understand what the word means. Understand the militarization aspect of it. And it's insane that people keep saying that. And I keep seeing that for almost everything in Tennessee or elsewhere. It's not fascism. Understand that word. You might not like it. It might be wrong. It's not fascism.
Do you remember, I don't know if y'all had this in your like high school government or civics class, Mark, but I remember our teacher printed off these sheets of paper that had government terms as it pertains to cows. And it was like socialism. You have a bunch of cows, the government takes your cows and gives them to people that don't have cows. And it was just, I would just encourage everyone to look that up because it's a very simple way to understand what these political terms that everyone's saying actually mean. And once you realize what fascism means as it pertains to cows, and then you can put it in your everyday life, you probably won't use that word so much. It's just people don't understand it. And I'm like, simple wiki search or like a meme search to figure out what it actually means. Maybe you won't use it so often because it doesn't really apply in the situation.
It loses all its meaning. You have no idea what it means. You can't say everything President Trump does is fascism. Everything that I don't like in politics is fascism. It's insane. Stop saying that word. It's losing meaning. It's the left's buzzword of the day. They don't really understand what it means, but they're going to keep saying it, and it's not right. Be smarter than that, and at least look up what it means, and then maybe you can try to use it aptly, or at least like we talk about fascism. Like, yeah, like there is countries where that's a thing. It's not the United States, and even if you think that there's aspects of it, it is not fascism. It is not a dictatorship. It's not a dictatorship, right? And if they're not controlling, that's close to socialism.
Okay, but I will also say that when someone uses the word fascism, it's kind of nice for me because I immediately know that they don't know what they're talking about, so I don't have to listen to them anymore. So it's kind of like a litmus test. Like, do I want to listen to this person? Oh, they said the word fascism. Gotta go. I'm gonna go find someone who knows what fascism means and listen to them.
Unless you're talking about China or Cuba or Venezuela, you don't understand what fascism means if you're using to describe our government.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, Mark. Let's get everybody a dictionary, a political dictionary. I'll write it. I would love to. I would love
normal
to
dictionary would be fine. Just an internet search.
An internet search. Everybody look up the word fascism before you use it in a sentence. Let's take a hard pivot to the women's NCAA final. Now, usually we talk about men's basketball here. The NCAA final was so boring on Monday night that I sat there and embroidered napkins for Easter. I was literally so bored. The women's, I didn't watch, but I wish that I had because it got kind of spicy there at the end. So you had LSU versus Iowa. And after the game was over, it wasn't a close game. Let's just be honest. Wasn't close at all. After the game was over, you had some girls that were jawing each other a little bit, one more than the other. As a very competitive, somewhat vindictive woman, I can't say that I wouldn't have done the same thing, but there have been some really hot takes on this exchange in the media in the last few days. Mark, lay out what happened for us and tell us what you think of what happened.
Yeah, well, one thing, they weren't jawing at each other. Only one person.
That's true.
It was a very one-sided thing. So basically what happened was at the end, Angel Reese, who's I guess probably the best player for LSU, definitely the top two players for LSU, basically went up to the girl from Iowa, Caitlin Clark, who's like the best player in college basketball. She won the player of the year and went like this for kind of the "you can't see me." I guess it's a John Cena wrestling thing, and then pointed at a ring finger like, "Oh, I'm winning this ring here." But it was really tacky because there was 10 seconds left in the game. She went to chase her down to show her that, to basically just trash talk her in a game where they're up by like 17 points. So that's what happened. And, people in the media rightly called it, kind of trashy, classless. It's just something that you're going over and above to, and it wasn't during the heat of the game. It was as the game was over. It just wasn't a good look, I don't think, for anybody. And then the controversy came because in the previous game, Caitlin Clark basically did that. She made a shot over at South Carolina. She just did that for like a couple seconds during the game. So there's this argument, and there's like, oh, is it racist that people are mad at Angel Reese, and while they did the same thing? And then there's people like Dave Portnoy specifically is like, yeah, I mean, it's not the same thing at all. It's completely different when you talk about somebody doing something for a short time in the game, as opposed to chasing somebody down as you're going to win a championship. Because obviously heart is broken and doing that. So that's kind of the situation. I think we're probably on different pages,
on different sides.
Yeah,
we are. I just think I choose to believe that Angel Reese did it. And she said this in the press conference after. when Caitlin Clark did that to the South Carolina player, she didn't like that she did that. And so she wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine. And listen, I know that when I get in a competitive situation, I tend to be the worst person in the world. And so, again, I'm trying to put myself in her shoes, and I can't be upset with her because I can't say that I wouldn't do something like that if I didn't like how someone acted earlier, giving them a taste of their own medicine. I don't know. I get my mom would probably be very upset with me if I did that. People would probably give me a hard time if I did that. I get it. I just do get it. I don't think it was becoming of a lady. I wouldn't recommend it, but I do get it. And that's kind of where I am on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's one point. It wasn't in a competitive situation. The game was over. I mean, that's I think your point is what the other side's argument is that.
But the adrenaline is high still.
There's 6 seconds to go. The game's over. You already won. I think that there's a little bit more of an excuse. Now, I want to say this. I just personally think it's classless both ways. I think Caitlin Clark, I don't think that's something you do.
Sure.
And I think you should be playing basketball and you should not be worried about doing it. So I think that both of them were classless.
I agree with that.
The second one's worse. I mean, I think the idea of chasing somebody down to make her, as you know, she's broken up about to lose a tournament game where it's not, I mean, the other one was kind of a very close game that you weren't sure was going to happen either way. But she went and did that. And I think the LSU before the game bothered me the most. They said, "Oh, they are so disrespectful, Iowa, because they left the 3-point line for South Carolina to shoot." That is called strategy. When somebody can't shoot, that's in every sport. And they're they were so classless, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? Do you understand?" And they took this personal offense to the fact they left South Carolina open from the 3-point line. A team with the best player in basketball, actually, Aaliyah Boston, and this gigantic, really talented big girl, that they were like, "Oh, shoot the 3. We don't want to get beat by her." And the idea that LSU thought it was classless, I'm just not a fan of the way they acted. I think the way they treated that's just basketball 101, and they made this weird issue where they're like, "Oh, we're fighting for South Carolina because they left them open for 3 and beat them." So it worked.
Yeah, no, I do agree that I think that LSU has this victim mentality kind of thing, getting on people. I do agree with that. All I'm saying is specifically in the Angel versus Caitlin drama, I wouldn't recommend acting like that. I don't think it was nice. I think it was tacky, but I do get it. I do understand, because I think if I was in the heat of a situation like that, I might also do something that's unbecoming of a lady. And I wouldn't be proud of it. She really did double down and defend herself, and which I don't love, but I can't say that I wouldn't. I do understand the act in itself. I don't understand the doubling down, but I do understand the act in itself.
I think that's another point. So I think we've all done things in the heat of something that we might regret, but it's you can at least look back and say, "Yeah, I shouldn't have done that." She was nothing but, and again, she was trying to get revenge for it. It wasn't even she did that to them. It was a super weird thing.
I know.
With that being said, I want to think that Angel Reese was awesome at the end when Joe Biden said this insane thing, which has never been done before, that Iowa should also be invited to the White House. It's what are you talking about? And she's they played such a good game. They didn't play a good game. 1, they lost by 17.
No.
2,
no.
Is it because it's women's sports? Because I've never heard of a runner-up being invited to the White House before, and it's not been the case.
Never.
So this idea that she wants them to be invited to, I think is so ridiculous, and it goes into this mindset that we become as a country where everyone gets a participation trophy. That's what that is. And it's ridiculous.
It's so bad.
And the LSU team, I give them credit. They're like, "Well, I don't want to go then. If you're just invite anybody, it should be special winning that." And they're like, "Well, we don't want to go to the White House." So I don't know if they're going or not, but I give them credit for standing up to that, because I think that's such an absurd thing. And, I don't have any problem with Joe Biden personally, but that's so insane. And that really takes away a lot of the credit from LSU for winning this and say, "Oh, we're just going to invite anybody." And of course, there's some ideas, and people are talking about the racial element, because Iowa's mostly white women, and LSU was mostly African Americans. So "Oh, let's invite these white people to the house," because it's just I'm not trying to put any racism on her. I'm not saying that's what she was intending, but this idea that because it's women's basketball and they played, I guess, kind of hard but got crushed, they somehow deserve to be in the White House in a game they were favored in. To be clear, Iowa was the favorite, so it's not like they were some crazy underdog story who lost by 17 but should have lost by 50. So I think Joe Biden, I think that was way out of line. I think that is that everyone wins mentality. I think it's BS, and it takes away from LSU's victory. So I agree with them on that. I just was not a fan of the way Angel Reese acted.
That's fair. I also agree that with you on every single one of those points. If you're the winner, you're the winner, and you get the spoils of a winner. And if you're not, I'm really sorry. Try again next year. Like that's just the way. That's life, baby. Let us know what you think of it. Drop some comments in, unless you're my mother who's scolding me for being a terrible competitor. Last topic. You might have seen in the news recently, Jennifer Aniston made a few comments about my favorite show that ever existed that she starred in, Friends. I love Friends. I watch it over and over and over and over. It's my go-to-sleep show most nights. I turn it on because I can sleep through the night with the laughter and everything. It's so nice. But she came out and said that she doesn't think that Friends would happen this day and age. She thinks that there are so many jokes that Gen Z would find offensive. Let me just say out of the gate that I'm so thankful I'm not Gen Z. I think that millennials have a much better sense of humor. But there are so many jokes that Gen Z would find offensive. And I just think it's sad. The Office would have never been on today. Parks and Rec kind of dances on the line sometimes of political correctness. Saying that Friends would never be allowed today. It's just, I personally think, and we've talked about this a few times, Mark, specifically with comedy, we've gone too far. Comedy is funny because it is edgy. That's what makes so many comedic things so funny. And Friends, I don't really think was all that edgy. It's just funny. I know. Okay, I know you hate Friends. I know you hate it. I think it's so funny. But I think it's sad that the star of this massive show where she was getting paid like millions of dollars per episode is living in 2023 and saying this would never have happened today. That's just sad.
Yeah, and I guess, I believe this is a thing, and I think that people have lost their sense of humor. I was just talking to my friend, like, I don't remember the last time there's been a legitimate funny movie. I feel like 2014, 2013 was the last time, like, there's actually a movie that made me laugh because of all the new rules. With that being said, Friends and The Office are both streaming on networks fully, and one's NBC, so they have all their episodes streaming. Like, I don't know that, I understand that there might be some jokes that people today would not like and they couldn't do. But overall, I mean, it's still streaming, and there's been other shows they've taken off. So like the idea, I'm not sure that you can't do those today. I think some of the jokes maybe they would redo, but I do think people maybe exaggerated a little bit, that the effects of that.
I will say, but I know they're streaming now, but I think that there is kind of an excuse to that of like, oh, this was the 90s. Oh, it's not on network television anymore. It's not on prime time anymore. This was the 90s. It's antiquated. We can look past it. All I'm saying is if
But they can't look past it for everything else. There's books that they're trying to ban that say things. There's people who said in the early 90s are trying to ban. So they haven't done that for anything else. I mean, everything else they say they put, and that's what Bill Maher's great. It's like they're putting everything from the 70s, 80s, 90s in today's lens, which is insane. Like you can't do that and expect it. And I do think that there's definitely something to what Jennifer Aniston said. And I do think that like people have, I really truly think that it's happened. It's been a real problem in movies. I can't think of the last funny movie. Everything is so sanitized and there's only certain groups you can make fun of now. And you can't make like just, harmless jokes about a lot of things. So I agree generally. I mean, I've watched Friends all the way through. I can't think of anything that people would really
I really can't
offensive.
Either.
I think The Office, I think in the early seasons there's some things, but I'll give credit to NBC. They have left those episodes on there where, Always Sunny in Philadelphia had to delete, their blackface episodes, which were obviously they were meant to actually make fun of that whole thing. So I think it's insane, but whatever.
Well, I know Comedy Central stopped running the Office Diversity Day episode. I do know that happened, but Peacock has left up all the rest of the episodes. I just think we've gone too far. We're not talking about something that people are taking seriously. A comedy show is a comedy show because it's comedy and it's not to be taken seriously. It's there for entertainment value only. And so when you start getting your feelings hurt about a script that someone has written just to be funny and not to actually villainize any type of person or choice or anything like that, I don't understand why we're doing this. But I do think that Jennifer Aniston is probably right, that some of it wouldn't fly today. I can't really think of what, but I'm sure she's right. She knows it better than I do.
And let me add this, because I think this is something that people really miss. Like a lot of people have gone up to Robert Downey Jr. He wore, blackface in Tropic Thunder, and then Ben Stiller. So there's these things, but nobody seems to understand the point of these. People are wearing this. Almost all the people who are wearing blackface or doing these things in movies, they're meant to be fools. Like they're bad people who like you don't want to be like. So it's like it's almost showing that these people are terrible and like the things that they're doing. And actually, Sarah Silverman was talking about that. It's like you're missing.
It's like
the
we're
point.
on your side. We're on your side. This is bad.
It's not like these people are the heroes of this.
No.
I think people have it's just gotten to the point, and I think we talked this before. It seems to me like it's going back in the other direction. I don't think this is hopefully not a long-term issue, and that people kind of see how insane some of these, I call them, they're basically activists are, because they don't, anything that they just think is even mildly offensive, we have to take off the air, which is insane. And that's closer to fascist than anything we talked about.
Yes.
but no, so I mean, I do agree they're generally, I guess I don't know about Friends, and I do give credit to Peacock and NBC. They have kept all the Office episodes up there. I mean, that is something. I mean, I just watched an episode the other day, I'm like, oh wow, I'm surprised it's still up there. But it's a funny show from the early 2000s where, and it was funny in the way that it's handled. So I think if they took that off, and I think people love The Office no matter what, so people would actually probably be mad if they did it The Office.
I know. I totally agree. I love The Office. Maybe I'll watch The Office while I'm working today. I love having voices in the house because it gets it quiet around here. Maybe I'll turn on The Office and have a little laugh today. Well, let us know what you think of all of that. And again, if you want to read our charter schools report, visit beacontn.org/charterstn. Mark, any final thoughts before we sign off for the weekend?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, have a happy Easter weekend. Enjoy time with family. Hopefully enjoy this beautiful sunlight. If you haven't subscribed to Decaf already, you can do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's been a pleasure to have you this week, and we will see you next week.